To die.
So,
Tuh.
how are you feeling about Roll20, Eric?
I fucking hate it so bad. And to be clear, because it's very popular to hate stuff online, I don't say that lightly, and it's nothing to do with the people involved, but the platform is broken, in my opinion. And I don't mean that in a glib sense. I mean, what I'm paying for does not work. And it doesn't work for any of my players. I've done all the advice, and so I'm done with Roll20. I'm moving to Foundry. Last night's session was really frustrating for me because of Roll20. And this is how you know I'm a DM, is that I love planning. Like, I love doing that. It's fun for me. Roll20 makes it the opposite of fun. It makes it Satan time, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So I'm really unhappy with it. And I feel like, I know it's not. This is just my emotional state, but I feel like I've wasted so much time on this platform and so much energy and so much money that could have been spent much better elsewhere.
Right.
And Roll20 keeps making these quote-unquote improvements, but it's like superficial stuff like adding PDFs and like, okay, that's great, but why don't you fix dynamic lighting? Why don't you make it so that the features that you're promoting as like, ooh, you know, pay us $10 a month for this, ooh, this is real great and fancy, actually work.
Right.
Regardless of your computer, if you have a good Wi-Fi connection, they should work.
Right. Because, I mean, even if you're able to have like a 2 megabit download, which, dude, I remember back in the day, if you could at least get like 4, you could game online. Like, that was enough to like play like Halo and shit.
Right.
Like, come on, make it work. Like, I know you guys have a lot of people. There's a lot of, well, if your influx is big, maybe it's time to change the system so like that it can handle it. Because, man.
Right. Like, if I'm going into, and this won't make sense to anybody who doesn't use Roll20, but if you're going into, like, because I reskin stuff all the time now.
Right.
And that's common on the tabletop. It's a common thing for DMs to do. It's supposed to save you time, right?
It does. It's supposed to.
It's supposed to, but anytime I edit a character sheet or I attach a new token to a character sheet, I have to, even if I'm just on there by myself, I have to reload everything.
Yep.
And it takes me literally 5 times as long to do one simple thing. And it makes me so angry. Like, it makes me so frustrated and mad and just like, this stuff should be easy.
Right.
It's fine if it's something complicated, but like, dynamic lighting should work. That if you're web-based, like, your platform should work nice and smooth. And I go over to D&D Beyond, and I'm sure they have more funding. I get the sense they're a bigger company, but everything just is super smooth. Everything works really good. It's laid out really well. I was looking at we'll get into this for today's episode, but I was looking at how the classes are laid out.
Yeah.
It has all the subclasses on a little like table of contents, and I'm like, finally, like, it all makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god. So yeah, I'm done with Roll20. Sorry, Roll20. It was a good run, but I'm out. It's time for something else.
That's interesting to me, because I kind of feel the same way. Like, and here's a funny little thing for you. So last night, while we were struggling, you had to do something with my token.
Yep.
Or something, and I had my sheet up, and you did something, and instantly my hit points reverted to level 1.
Ugh, dude.
I didn't say anything. I was like, good thing I know how to fix that shit. Beep, beep, beep.
And every NPC token I've been throwing on the board that I pull from the compendium, so like, if it's not a monster you've used before, you search for it in a special search bar, and you drag and drop it, right? None of their AC, like, none of the tokens have AC input. And I go into the settings and it says NPC AC, and it does nothing. So I have to manually do stuff that should just already be there.
Be done. Yeah.
It's so fucked, dude.
That's
it's so frustrating.
That was happening at the end of Forged, and that's why I started just writing it on paper. Just because I was like, okay, this is the monster's 16. That's all I need to know. And like,
right.
It was, so I definitely feel your pain on that so much.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I took so much time, just like you said, reskinning all of this stuff and making what I thought was going to be fun and cool. And then the character sheets for everybody. Everyone gets onto the page. all of the characters I made, like the monsters, they're all like zeros now. Everything's fucked. The players are all like, "Oh, I don't have any attacks in my middle thing," and you're like, "What are you talking about? I literally went through and made them for everybody, and now they're just gone." Awesome.
Their updates seem to be really bad on the user end. Like, oh, we're doing this new thing, and suddenly it'll just be updated, and you're like, wait, what happened to this? And why do none of my character sheets or macros work?
Right.
Like, everything's just fucked. And like, I think yesterday I spent an hour doing dynamic lighting on the Sunless Citadel level 1 map. So I split it into like 4 or 5 pieces, because that's what they recommend. Like, oh, you need to make your maps, don't make them bigger than 25 by 25. Okay, that's practical. Have you seen the maps that exist?
Right.
Even in the published adventures for D&D. Like, they're way bigger than that. So what are you talking about, Roll20? But I followed the advice, and then I spent time making sure all the dynamic lighting was like set up. I did all the doors, I did everything, and then I had to delete it all. And I was just like, motherfucker, dude, I'm not doing this anymore. I refuse. So yeah, it was really, it was a really frustrating session for me because of that.
Oh, I bet.
And it didn't need to be.
Oh yeah, it was a fun session on player side.
Right.
It was.
I just on the other side, I cannot believe, like, everyone complains about being in combat all the time. You finally get out, and then one player will just be like, I'm gonna shoot this thing, and then it's like,
dude,
okay, here we go, back into combat for the 15th time tonight. You guys,
that was
all right.
I mean, I take the blame, and I'm happy to, because I don't care. But like, in reality, there have been 2 situations that could have been avoided, but other players did something to provoke the situation, and I was like,
oh yeah,
what are you doing?
Not just you at all. Yeah.
Like, what happened? I have no control over the skeleton.
No, not at all.
Right. I understand I got cursed.
And I'm going to interject really quick. Yeah. So Ian's character is this little mechanome. He opened a door, and he's like, I don't really care. I'm just going to do it. And everyone's like, don't do it. And he did. And he has this curse, which is a glyph that I think we just kind of flavored in the moment, as it looks like the @ sign. The @ sign doesn't mean what it means in our world, so it's just a weird looking glyph, but that's the shape of it. And it glows purple all the time. And certain things will trigger this basically demonic entity. It's this really high powered skeleton that rides a skeletal horse to suddenly appear and attack the party.
It's great.
And number 3 doesn't have control. Once it starts going, whoa, it starts to flash, everyone's like, oh shit.
Yeah. But then I cast a spell and it accidentally summoned a fire elemental.
Well, we are using certain crit cards, which some of the
fails.
Like, if you fail, some of the failures are like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Wow.
And this fire elemental appeared, and the DM, since we're playing Dungeons and Dragons, was like, right now it is neutral towards everything. It has no motive in what's going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of our players was like, I attack it. And I was like, what the fuck?
I get its attention.
Right. And I was like, but whatever, I'm into it, because, I'm the person who's like, I got cursed. I don't care. This is great. I love it. It's fun. So cool. We attacked it. Whole thing happens. Next day or next session, big monstrous tree. Don't go in that room, you guys. It'll attack you. Don't even fuck around with it. I cast Firebolt. What?
I'm like, all right, well, now it's attacking you.
So, super funny. I'm not bothered by it. I've enjoyed the combat lately.
I'm fine with lots of combat, but I know people aren't like, no one's having a bad time, but they're like, Jesus, we're just fighting all the time. Right. And I keep being like, yeah, that's because you're in a crazy dungeon and you're just traipsing around, like, firing off spells, or, we set off alarm, that'll be fine.
Right.
Let's just, all right.
I love it.
All right, guys.
That's what
girls.
That's what I love about this campaign, is just the realness of how I feel a party that's composed like this would kind of traipse around in this horrifying dungeon. They're all kind of not really ready for it.
Right.
So it's real fun.
Definitely fish out of water.
Yeah, it's super fun.
And if everyone knew because I did a crazy amount of homebrew, which was unnecessary, but I love doing that. Right. I love world building, even if no one's going to find out. That's not a sad thing for me. It's fun. But if you guys knew what the larger context Yeah, you guys are not prepared.
Right. Oh, that's something that I could feel in the game. I'm
Yeah.
like, this is like, yeah, I don't know, man. This is craziness.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
super fun. Speaking of,
You
said it earlier.
I did.
Yeah, subclasses.
Right. I think that's what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
I think.
This is my jilted segue.
Jilted segue. That should be your like emo band name.
I got on this subject honestly when I was first thinking about doing my campaign, the once a month thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted there to be something kind of different, more than just the world. So I thought to myself, wouldn't it be cool to give the players I mean, obviously I hadn't thought much about it because it was just an idea, but
It was conceptual.
right. If you pick Paladin as your class, and then you're like here level 3 and you're like, okay, I pick this subclass. And then as you're leveling up, you're like, oh man, but I really love what this subclass gets at level 5.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, that'd be cool to let the players, as they level up, kind of skill tree it in a sense. Like you can go to these other subclass features rather than take the one that you would get next. Now, this could fuck you
Mm-hmm.
because some of the class abilities synergize with your other ones that are lower.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them don't do that. And I also would definitely have the caveat of you need to give me a narrative reason why this happens. Why all of a sudden you're getting this ability rather than what your thing is.
Sure.
Whether it's story from your background, a flaw, it'd be another way that you could mess with the backstory of characters,
Sure.
So that was like the concept.
Mm-hmm.
And then Eric was like, hey bro, we should do an episode about something like that or something.
something. Listening to the previous episode before this one, I had this cool idea which I totally forgot about until it was too late, which was what if you used your background to mediate or kind of be an entry into this, but totally forgot about that. So maybe at some point we'll revisit this and delve into it. But I had a lot of fun just kind of going with this. I approach it almost like you're multi-classing subclasses.
Yeah.
That's how I approach it.
That's how my brain kind of thought of it too.
Yeah.
And then this is weird about it, but as I was thinking about it today,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, I think somebody had a similar idea
Mm-hmm.
to this, but kind of wanted to clip it a little. And I think that's what some feats do, these types of things. They give you
Sure.
a tiny piece of another subclass.
That's right. If you listen to Jeremy Crawford, that's exactly how he describes feats. Like, it's allowing you to customize your class outside of the class, essentially.
Right.
Which, that's also cool.
Right. I think feats are awesome, but I think what we're trying to do here is a little bit more power gamey in a way.
Yeah, and feats get ignored a lot in 5e because they're not. It's a highly optional thing, so it's kind of just this little trinket ability usually that a character has. At least in all the games I've run and played,
Right.
feats are never really focused on that much. So maybe if you really leaned into that, that'd be cool. But I think the price for most characters, whether usually you have to either take your ASI, your ability score increase, or a feat, the price is too high because everybody's constantly trying to get their stats higher.
Right.
That's really a big focus.
It is. And as when I was not younger,
When I was a young
when
lad,
we were younger D&D players, a few years ago, my brain was like, yeah, get those stats way high so you could get those modifiers. But then when you're looking at it, if you have if you're already at a +3 for your modifier, a +2 to it, so it's maxed at a 5, it doesn't seem like much at first. But I don't know. In early game, that matters. But as late game approaches, that too is not remarkable, if you know what I mean.
well, you also, your proficiency bonus comes into play.
Yeah, absolutely.
No pun intended, much more. So even if your stat isn't maxed out, your proficiency bonus will get maxed out. And you'll still have a big fat spell attack bonus or
Right.
attack bonus or whatever modifier you're trying to maximize.
Right. I'm curious to know, honestly, where you kind of took this for the subclass thing versus kind of what I thought of.
So you want me to start?
Yeah, let's hear what you kind of played with here.
Sure. So I'm calling this subclass hacking, basically. Cool. Like you're finding ways to manipulate it, and I'm sure Ian will agree with this. I have no idea if this will be good in play. No. This is completely conceptual. It's not even proof of concept. It's just like, this is a cool concept. Let's try it.
Yeah.
And so I'm calling these synthesis builds because you're synthesizing different elements that don't, rules as written, they don't go together.
Right.
I love Notion, by the way. Anybody, if you like word processing or whatever, check out Notion. It's free. It's one of the best things ever. But I've been using it for everything, for notes, DMing, podcasts, whatever. So I made this table of all the classes and what their core stat is. And also, everybody typically has a secondary stat, and if you look at what their proficiencies are for their saves, it will tell you what that second stat is usually.
Right.
And I was like, okay, so I'm going to make a little rule for myself. I'm going to say you can only take subclasses from another class that has the same core stat.
Oh, okay.
And later on, maybe the secondary stat, so you can be a little more complicated, but I didn't have time. And I basically made 2 example synthesis builds, and I use that as my guiding principle. So I made a fighter.
Okay, I got a quick question for you.
Sure.
Because I'm curious to know, because it sounds like the way you're saying this, it's a bit different than the way I thought of it, but I'm fascinated for this. So are you saying that as you approach this, you could take any subclass from any other grouping potentially, but now you've narrowed it down to you have to share the same core stat?
That's right. I gave myself a limitation.
Okay, because that's crazy, because in my brain, it limited to you, like my brain was thinking, limited you to class. So like you as a fighter could take any of the fighter subclass
that you didn't take. Yeah.
Right.
This, like, I went more freeform because I thought of it more like multi-classing.
Yeah, that's cool. I think I'm like, oh yeah, I guess, especially if you limit it to the core stat, that makes you have the ability to do really weird shit.
And it may not work very well because what I did is say, so I'll go through one of the synthesis builds so you can get an example. But I actually made a really cool table where I have all the base stats for the fighter and what they get on every level. And then what I picked was the name. I gave the build to back up, so I'm not stroking out of myself. I gave each build a conceptual name. So this is the Scoundrel.
Yeah.
Okay. So base stat is Dex, so it's a Dex fighter.
Nice.
Base class is fighter, and then the prime subclass is Rogue. Okay, so it's Rogue Thief. So I just went classic, but then you also pick a fighter subclass, and I picked the Champion.
Okay.
So I'm like, all right, just something fightery, right? So you get all your core base class stuff. You get that like normal, and then your prime stuff. At first, I was like, okay, well, you have to take the prime features,
right? If
you have 2 things at a certain level, but then I was like, no, you have to choose,
right?
So you can pick the thief stuff because, for instance, at 3rd level, you get your archetype. That's pretty typical. And the thief gets fast hands and second story work, and the champion gets improved critical. So you could either take the 2 roguish archetype features or 1 and then take improved critical.
Right.
So you can it's a trade-off. The one thing that I thought was cool was at like level 9, for instance, you get Indomitable for your core class, but Thief also gets Supreme Sneak. So I'm like, well, you can choose one of those.
Right.
And there are certain ones like, especially for the second build, where there's certain core things that if you don't take them, you could severely handicap yourself. Like I did a Sorcerer build, and when you get Meta Magic, you can also take other things.
Yeah.
So if you don't take Meta Magic, that might be really bad.
Well, yeah, it'd create a very conundrum type thing to you.
Right. So I like the idea of limitations, and I really liked laying it out visually. I'll just show you. So it's like color coded, and I linked all the powers to D&D Beyond.
Oh, sick.
And I literally did it in like 2 hours. Like, that's how easy Notion is to use. So I will make a public Notion page with the tables on this for anybody who wants to see. I don't think anybody will look at it, but just realize if you click on the links, you have to have access to those D&D Beyond books.
Right.
or you won't be
It
able to
won't
see
let
it
you.
unless it's a SRD thing, like a basic rule thing.
Right.
And that's basically all I did. Is I was like, okay, well, you can take this or you can take that, and you can build as you go along.
Right.
But that's your strictures. You have 2 subclasses, so you're multi-classing kind of in subclasses, right?
That's really cool. I didn't even think about that. I really like that. My brain wants to say another way that you could put limitations while still keeping it open is, as long as one of your core stats is shared with one of the other stat things, then you can take something from
Sure,
that. But
yeah.
if it's your secondary, obviously you might not be as good as at it.
Right.
It makes me think, man, I'll bet you this is there's some sort of way that this is like how Pathfinder 2E kind of works.
Probably. And I know Pathfinder 2E is all about the feats, and that's
Right.
how they do that. So I'm not going to go into as much detail, but my second build, I called the Spider.
Oh no!
And
You give me a little details again.
Okay.
I gotta hear some.
So
of
it's a sorcerer core
Okay.
with a bard overlay. So your core, because they both are charisma based, right?
Right.
So I took for the tertiary subclass, so the low priority subclass of sorcerer, I took shadow magic sorcerer,
Okay.
and then College of Whispers bard.
Oh, interesting.
But there's certain things. So like at level 3, you get meta magic, or College of Whispers gives you psychic blades and words of terror. So you could take meta magic and words of terror, for instance.
Right.
So you were talking about make it conceptual. So this is somebody who is a performer, but they're really deceptive. They like to steal secrets and be like a purveyor of information.
Right.
And this one was really weird because almost all the subclass stuff for both subclasses happen at the same levels. So it makes
nice.
it really you really have to choose wisely, or you could really make a bad character. Like a character
Right.
that just, when you're up at level 15, just gets plowed.
Smashed. It doesn't have really anything to do.
Yeah. And that's basically it. I was just I would have to actually play a character, which I think would be really fun to just do some one-shots or something, or small 4-session adventures,
Right.
and try some of these out and see if any of it works,
Right.
So that was my conceptual kind of build for these. And again, Notion made it really easy to make it visual, so I could see when you get stuff. So I highly recommend any dungeon master, check Notion out. It's fucking great, and it's free. It's unbelievable that it's free. So anyways, what do you got?
It's not like I built out a character
Mm-hmm.
or anything like that, because mine again was just conceptual. So
Yeah.
I was gonna kind of build one right now and talk about
Sweet.
the idea.
Let's do it.
So my original just kind of thought has been to do a fighter, because
Easy.
I've never played a fighter, and I always like fighters. They sound fun, but I always get caught up in other shit. So yeah, fighter. Take for example.
Mm-hmm.
I'm building this right now, everybody, in D&D Beyond. I like the idea. I always do. Whenever I'm creating fighters, I start them out as defense fighters, because that +1 to the AC that just is you get that. That's fucking great.
What's is that the fighting style defense?
Yeah.
Okay.
But let's make this guy a 2-weapon fighter. We'll do the standard array. I've done this so many times that I don't even really need to think about how I'm gonna do it.
Right now you know how the drill.
Well, I just know how would I power game a fighter? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And almost always my dump stat is intelligence, because it's very rare to have an intelligence saving throw.
Right. It would be a specific type of campaign, I would think, more social,
Right.
or something like that, for sure.
So then I'm just gonna pick soldier for his
Background.
because it's easy. He's gonna be proficient in Arcana.
I mean, all right. You do you, boo boo.
I'm just trying to get to where I can look at subclasses. That's all.
You said your dump stat was intelligence.
Intelligence, yeah. All right, here we go. We are now ready to go back and manage this guy's character level. So let's just make him a level 15.
Level 15, eh?
Yeah.
Going high. Going high.
So when thinking about how would you who is this character? What is this gonna be? 2-handed fighter.
Mm-hmm.
I feel this guy would be probably a battle master. I think battle master starts you out with some really interesting things.
The tactics are super cool, for sure.
Yeah. Maneuvers. So the level 3 option. So we'll take him to level 3. Give him a few of these, like disarming. That one's cool. What's another really cool one?
There's one where you can charge, when you can charge in. There's a couple of really cool ones.
Lunging attack.
Yeah. I think those are super fun.
And then let's do a commander's strike or something. So then we go to the next level. The next point where you would get a subclass feature.
So 3 and then 7?
7, I think. Yep.
Okay.
So we gave him some Battle Master, right? I think maybe a Champion would be good at 7th level because it would give you get to add half your proficiency to any strength, dex, or constitution checks.
That's a remarkable athlete.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Or you could even take the Cavalier, which is the warding maneuver. So maybe you're like, oh, I also do well with this horse, so now I have a horse.
One thing about that, too, is you'd want to make sure that you had horses in your campaign.
In the game.
That's the one thing. But let's just say, for this is a heavy, cavalry-based type thing.
Yeah, actually, let's keep him at Remarkable Athlete. I think that fits better for this dual sorted kind of...
I would say it's good. Half your proficiency bonus added.
Yeah, I mean, that's
especially for constitution checks. If you're getting hit I think that's a good one.
Or any, just later on, once you've hit higher levels, taking this little Remarkable Athlete, once you're level 15, 17, totally. It's going to be powerful. So we got the 7th level option. The next is 10th level option.
So you're not going to keep picking from champion necessarily. You're going to be okay, what can I pick from that's cool?
From one of these other fighter subclasses.
Yeah, I gotcha. Okay.
Making just this fight and obviously, like you've said, this is just a different way to do it.
No, it's cool. I'm digging it. I like kind of the buffet style. Okay, now I'm gonna pick this.
Right, but just like we've said, there's some stuff that picking something from another one may not actually be that beneficial.
It might be helpful to do your version is charted out so you can see when you get stuff, so you can plan out a little more. Oh, I'm gonna want to make sure I don't disregard this main thing.
Exactly. Ooh, you could do the Purple Dragon Knight at 10th level, gains resistance to psychic damage.
But you have to have the psionic energy die. Yeah.
Maybe, you'd have to see, with this, you'd have to figure out a way.
You have to plan it out.
To make that, maybe you could use since your first class is the Battle Master, maybe you just use a Battle Master die in lieu of that.
You can kind of switch it out.
Right, just use that instead.
Or maybe if you could say something like, take the Psi Warrior and you can turn one of your Battle Master die permanently into a psychic die.
Oh, there you go.
But it's non-transferable. It stays as that.
It stays there.
So you kind of take a hit with your Battle Master.
That would work.
But you get this cool, you can't really be,
Right.
Making you afraid is really hard at that point.
Right, and that would be, as a frontline dual-handed fighter, that could be interesting. It would almost be interesting to say, at each point where you get a subclass feature, you can pick one from one of the other subclasses, even if it's a lower feature.
Oh, so you could pick, at your level 7, you could pick a level 3.
Right.
I gotcha. So, for instance, if level 3, if you go for Psi Warrior and level 3 gives you psychic dice.
You'd get psychic dice.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. That's a really cool addition where that makes it feel way more customizable. Who knows how crazy that would be on table? Because the intuition is telling me that... you have to have some kind of trade-off where if you're going to give this crazy champion fighter type a cool psionic ability, there's got to be some kind of downside to it as well.
Yeah.
But that's cool in concept. I love that. That's awesome.
You want to create a very strong hitting fighter, maybe you take a brutal critical that's from a lower level.
Right.
From that some fighter thing, or maybe you want to take the gunslinger, be able to use gunslinging and have a sword as well, and
sure.
There could be a lot of different ways, just like we're saying, because a lot of fighter stuff gives you a special die that you get a roll
to some kind of resource pool to spend.
Right. So maybe as you're leveling up, if you're taking these other subclasses, it takes the pool that you normally increases and stretches it out across those different abilities you have. So you don't get you wouldn't get 3 Battle Master dice, or you could, But if you took like Psy Warrior, you'd have to sacrifice one of them for the Psy Warrior dice. And then as you like level up, when you'd get more dice for the Battle Master, you could pick, okay, I'm going to add this next die is going to go to my psionic power.
That's cool. And if, for instance, if we jumped over to sorcery, you would have to spend sorcery points to purchase, like,
right.
To get this, you have to sacrifice. You won't have as many
X
sorcery
amount.
points or something.
Right.
Yeah, I like that.
So that would like allow you to still use those, but now you have this other thing. So you could end up with a character that has a bunch of like low level subclass stuff that's a high level character, but that would give them these crazy options to really do wild shit in combat or role play their characters in a very unique way. And yeah, it may hinder. It totally could clip your wings at high level.
Right.
But it also could give you a lot of options to, maybe you could create a very burst damage type thing where you hit like a few times so hard that it's like, holy shit.
Right.
And then it's like, I got nothing, guys.
Right.
It's over.
I think, too, as long as, for instance, like a fighter, as long as they keep getting their extra attacks and spellcasters keep getting their spell levels, they're probably going to be okay unless their DM is really malicious. But it's like all the modifying stuff, so like the second winds and the meta magic, and I feel like that's the stuff they would have to spend, and you have to spend it really wisely.
Right.
Or else, like, you know, sorcerer is kind of based on like, oh, I can get my spell slots back, I can do cool things. Oh, I'm out of spell slots, or I'm out of meta magic.
Oh, dude, the Monday campaign I play a sorcerer, and I ran out of sorcery points and very quickly realized how crucial
they are
to the class.
Yeah.
Because it was like the session right after we talked about like kind of the stuff we were going to change about it.
Yeah.
But I'd already burned so many spell slots at that point, and I'd already burned so many staff charges.
Right.
So I was like already in dire straits. I was like, shit. I don't think the party realizes like how hard I hit everything the last few games, and I have nothing left.
He went supernova. Never go supernova when you're in the belly of the beast. Don't do it.
I have to be super careful with that staff too, because if it
explodes, right?
It'll explode if I use it too much.
Yeah.
We haven't had a chance, and I don't know if you know that you've been doing this, but you haven't targeted me specifically with a spell other than radius ones. Because if I get targeted, I'm allowed to absorb the damage into it, and it gives me that many spell.
Oh, nice.
Whatever the spell level was is how many charges I get back. But if you charge it even just one over, it explodes.
Nice. I wasn't even thinking about it. Just hasn't come up.
Right.
And I probably wouldn't metagame in that way. There's other metagamey things I like doing, but that one I'm like, I don't feel like any enemies at this point would know that.
Right.
So they would go for they might attack you because you're really big, for instance, you know.
Especially since it's not in its form either.
But that's good to know. I will keep that in mind for higher level baddies.
I don't have much more other than just saying, like, if you have any other thoughts just on the idea of subclass hacking.
I really like it because you've heard me talk about this before. I don't know about on the podcast. But classes in general bother me because I feel like I love the idea of the archetype. Like, I want to be this iconic warrior, or I want to be the caster. That's really cool. But I feel like classes get you locked into something, and at least for the way I like to play, you're kind of focused on the quote-unquote wrong things.
Right.
You're focused on the mechanics and the stuff instead of who your character is in the world and what they care about and all those things. And so this seems like a great first step to cracking that a little bit and thinking outside the box in terms of how can I hack D&D to get that customization without completely overhauling all the rules and doing something totally different, which is cool too. But like, I really love this as a concept, and I definitely want to try building out some things and even mixing both of our ideas, like trying different versions and iterations out. So yeah, good call on the idea, good sir.
Yeah, it could be super fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, yet again, I find myself wondering, and I might even grab my rule book later today and look at it for Pathfinder and see if that's really the way that they're their thing works. Like you pick this first thing, and then as you level up, you can pick. I think you can pick certain things
That's what you've told me before. Is
from
like
other places.
yeah, and the feats are the platform to do that essentially.
Right, and the feats aren't the feats that we know
Right.
as feats in D&D. Feats for them are like abilities, things they do.
It's like 3rd edition feats.
Right.
Like Evolved, but everybody got feats. It's like picking spells. Like when you're first building, there were so many, it was overwhelming.
Right.
Just like a whole chapter of feats.
It's so crazy.
Yeah.
Nothing but feats.
This is a really cool idea. I think we should test it out and then do another episode down the road
Sure.
once we've tried it out and be like, that was an absolute failure. Like playing it was
Right.
horrible, or wow, that was really cool and fun.
Well, maybe on depending on how some of these one-shots go, if they're a certain level, maybe I'll make one
You should.
and show it to you and be like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm going to make this.
Try it.
And this will be like the track, and see if you like, oh, okay, cool.
You're already pre-approved. Your credit is good here, sir.
Nice. My credit's not good, but I'm glad it's good here.
Your D&D credit is.
Oh, wow.
You shut your whore mouth.
That's debatable.
But yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. You want to leave us with any thoughts?
Well, my closing thoughts are this. I am proved to myself in playing games, and I fucking hate Eric, but he's so smart sometimes with, and I think maybe it's just because we know each other so well. He has this way of saying things, and they don't stick in my head at first. It takes him a good month, and then all of a sudden, these words that he told me kind of like become reality in a weird way, where I start to like do that. And it's this idea of like let people play D&D the way they want to. It's okay. It's not going to ruin the table to let that person do this for 20 minutes.
Right.
You're going to get your 20 minutes. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to feel a little bit of that last night playing with everybody. And so my thought was this, what I'm slowly getting to, is let people play the way they want to play if it's not hurting you. And also, be grateful if you get to even have a group.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to find a group that plays all the time.
It's very hard.
And
for sure.
And embrace failures in
Yeah.
the game, because
Yeah.
that seriously is what makes it fun. When people fuck up, when people do crazy shit,
Mm-hmm.
and they do things like attack the tree, or the passive elemental that's sitting there, they shoot something at it, or they do something to get it. Like, those are insane things to do, but it created such a fun, at least for me. I don't know how anyone else felt. I was like, that is so fucking stupid. I can't believe you did that. This is going to be great. I'm
Right.
strapped in. This is going to be, could be the end of the party. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm excited, and I hope that any of you that listen and play learn to let go a little bit. It's all right. Let go.
Yeah.
Play.
Yeah.
And let the shit happen, man. It's cool.
For sure. Hells yeah.
Stay sweaty.
Stay sweaty.
Stay sweaty. What was that sound?
That was me kissing.
Force damage.
Like, share, subscribe.